Morning all, and here we are. We are up to the Los Angeles Kings. So we're almost halfway through the league. Um, the LA Kings are an interesting team, and I decided to wear their first logo and the one they're wearing currently to show this team's gone through some changes. There's all these different eras with the Kings, which I think makes them a little different than some of the teams I've covered. They had a good start, mushy middle, followed by a pretty lousy 80s. So the 70s was kind of and then the 80s was terrible for the most part. Miracle in Manchester notwithstanding, and then in the 90s they had their ups, their downs. The early 2000s, same. And then all of a sudden, they are two-time Stanley Cup champions. So they no longer have that frustration hanging over their heads. Took them almost 50 years. They win a Stanley Cup, and they didn't do it with 99. And that was the surprise. And then as I'm putting this board together last night, I reached the trades part of the board, and I realized this team has been poorly managed a long ways along. The biggest problem the Kings used to have was not thinking ahead. So just in the moment, not thinking ahead as to what they were going to do. All-time leading scorers, Marcel Dion's number one on the board there. 550 goals, 757 assists, 1,307 points. Luke Robitaille, 557 goals, 597 assists, 1,154 points. Dave Taylor, 431 goals, 638 assists, 1,069 points. Wayne Gretzky, 246 goals, 672 assists, 918 points. Anze Kopitar, 312 goals, 576 assists, 118 points. That's right, Kopitar's 112 points away from 1,000. Bernie Nichols, 327 goals, 431 assists, 758 points. Butch Goring, 275 goals, 384 assists, 659 points. Dustin Brown, 282 goals, 336 assists for 618 points. Rob Blake, 163 goals, 333 assists, 494 points. And then Jim Fox rounds out the top 10, 186 goals, 293 assists, 479 points. Excellent top 10. Kind of surprising Charlie Simmer's not in it. Charlie Simmer was part of the Triple Crown line with Dave Taylor and Marcel Dion. And you think of that line having been dominant to the point where you would expect Simmer to be in the top 10. They would trade Simmer out to Boston, however, as disputes occurred. The wins leaders, Jonathan Quick, 309. He is far and away the number one guy. Rogie Vachon, 171. Kelly Rudy, 145. Mario Lessard with 92. And then Jamie Storr with 85. So there are some big names who've gone through their nets. But when you look at their actual top five, it's Jonathan Quick, Rogie Vachon, Kelly Rudy. And that's basically it for stellar goaltending for any length of time in LA. Coaching wins. Daryl Sutter, 225. Andy Murray, 215. Bob Pulford, 178. Terry Murray with 139. And Larry Robinson with 122. Robinson is remembered primarily for being a Montreal Canadian, but he did move on to the Kings before the end of his career, and he did coach for the Kings as well. Yes, he coached for the New Jersey Devils, I'm well aware, but he did spend a decent amount of time in LA. So Stanley Cups, as stated, they have two, 2012 and 2014. In the playoffs, they were in the playoffs 30 out of 51 seasons they've played so far. They finished second in the West in the first year in the league. So they were one of the better expansion teams. So 1967, they go, all right, we're going to bring in 6 brand new teams to add to the 6 teams we already have. To make things fair to the 6 new teams, we're going to put them all in their own division, and they're all going to have a chance to go. One of them will end up in the Stanley Cup final, and we'll leave the original 6 in their own division. It didn't last very long that way, but that's how they started it out. The LA Kings went through a long period without playoffs. From 2003 until 2009, no playoffs for the Kings. If you look at their captain's history, Bob Wall was their captain from 67 to 69. Larry Cahan from 69 to 71. Bob Pulford, 71-72. Terry Harper, 73 to 75. Mike Murphy from 75 to 81. Dave Lewis, 81 to 83. Terry Ruskowski, 83 to 85. Dave Taylor, 85 to 89. Wayne Gretzky from 89 to 96. Rob Blake, 95 to 2001 and 2007, 2008. Matthias Nordstrom from 2000 to 2007. Dustin Brown from 2008 to 2016. And Anze Kopitar from 2016 to 2019. So, not as long of a list as I've seen with some teams on this board. So, not too bad. But again, the Kings have struggled. They have struggled with, and I'm not going to say as much with identity as I have with a couple of others, but direction. And how long they've been a contender, and then their ability to trade away draft picks has been huge for them. It stood out right away. And now we're up to the draft. So, draft, 1967 they draft first. Rick Pagnuti is drafted first, I'll go Pagnuti. Drafted first. 1968 drafting seventh, they get Jim McAnally. 1980, so they have no top 10 draft picks between 68 and 80. They do finish near the bottom of the league, but they don't keep any of those picks. 1980, they draft 4th, Larry Murphy, and they draft 10th, Jim Fox. 1981, they draft 2nd, they draft Doug Smith. 1984, they draft 6th, they get Craig Redmond. 1985, they draft 9th, Craig Duncanson, and number 10, Dan Grattan. 1986, they draft 2nd, Jimmy Carson. 1987, they draft 4th, Wayne McBean. 1988, they draft 8th, Marty Jelena. 1990, they draft 7th, Daryl Sador. 1994, they draft 7th, Jamie Storr. 1995, they draft 3rd, Aki Berg. 1997, they draft 3rd again, Olli Jokinen. 2007, Thomas Hickey is drafted 4th. 2008, they draft 2nd, Drew Doughty. 2009, Braden Shen's drafted 5th. And 2019, this year, Alex Turcotte is drafted 5th. And the interesting thing to me about the Kings is that in almost every case, up until Drew Doughty, anybody they draft early gets traded pretty early in their career. I mean, Jimmy Carson, it's understandable why they traded him, but there does seem to be a lack of faith. And then there's a lack of top 10 picks that we'll get to, because it's really weird how many first-round picks this team just went, we'll trade it. We'll trade it. And again, it feels like they were trading those first-round picks to try to get better in the short term, and it really cost them in the long term. Retired numbers. Number 4, Rob Blake is retired. Number 16, Marcel Dion. Number 18, Dave Taylor. Number 20, Luc Robitaille. Number 30, Rogie Vachon. And of course, league-wide, Wayne Gretzky's retired as 99, but it feels like it means something with the Kings because he did play there, and it definitely gets its own retirement ceremony to me. 918 points and all of that. All right, had to pause things there. Shadow wanted to go upstairs, so I sent him. So that's where we're at with their numbers and all that other wonderful stuff, and then we get into the trades. And the trades is where I really wanted to get, because I'm confused as to why some of these deals take place. And I went more with the older ones than the newer ones, because as we go through this series, I'm kind of going through some trades we've already discussed. And with the Kings, I was like, okay, was that a seismic change? No, I'll leave it as it is. So there are some trades people are going to be like, oh, you forgot this one. I didn't. I go through every trade on the list, and I go, okay, did that make a huge difference? I'll leave that one out, and we'll get into other ones. Because again, when you're filling the board, you gotta pick and choose which ones you're going to use and which ones you're not. All right, notable trades. May 20th of 1968, the LA Kings acquire Skip Craik. I don't know either. Boston gets the number 1 draft pick of 1970 from them. Draft 3rd, and they draft Reggie Leach. That's the first whoops of a first-round draft pick they gave up in 1970. May 14th, 1969, so almost a year to the day, LA acquires Ross Lonsberry and Eddie Shack from Boston. Boston gets Ken Turlick, a 1971 first, which became Ron Jones. But it's still a first-round draft pick they've traded, and the 1973 first-round draft pick, which is Andre Savard. So they've traded Savard and Leach, and they've got Craik, Lonsberry, and Shack. This isn't a great great move for a brand new team. November 4th, 1971. LA acquires Rogie Vachon, a 1975 first-round draft pick, which is number 16, Tim Young. Montreal acquires Dennis DeJordy, Dale Hoganson, Noel Price, Doug Robinson, and a 1975 first-round draft pick, which is the number 15 pick, and it's Pierre Mondu. Pierre Mondu, of course, went on to have some success with Montreal, right? And, of course, Tim Young would end up in Minnesota, so that draft pick didn't stay with them either. May 29th, 1973, the LA Kings get Bob Murdoch and Randy Rhoda from Montreal for their 1974 first-round draft pick, Mario Tremblay. At this point, they really should have stopped trading their firsts. The Tremblay first never should have left them, because they already should have seen with Reggie Leach and Andre Savard, hey, maybe we're trading away good players when we lose these first-round draft picks. But not every GM understood the importance of the draft at this time. The importance of the draft, I think, really came into focus in 79, when you had basically 2 drafts for the price of 1 and there were so many superstars available. But the Kings managed to mess that one up as well. And this is well before we had Bruce McDonald throwing money around that he didn't have. And all this other wonderful stuff for the Kings, right? February 14th, 1974, the Kings acquired Gene Carr. The Rangers acquire a 1977 first-rounder, which became Ron Duguay. He played for quite a while in the NHL and had some success as well. Man, all the mistakes. June 23rd, and just think, they're trading their first-round draft pick in 1977 in February of 1974. Just think if a team was doing that now. And not a good team either. June 23rd, 1975, the Kings acquire Bart Crashley and Marcel Dion. So this makes up for it. Detroit gets Terry Harper, Dan Maloney, and a 1976 second-round pick, which becomes Jim Roberts. Yes, the Kings win that one going away. They've got the face of the franchise in Marcel Dion. So what do they surround him with? Well, on October 9th of 1978, they get Ron Graham from the Bruins. The Bruins take a number 1 draft pick back from 1979, and that first rounder becomes Ray Bourque. They've traded Leach, Savard, Mondu, Tremblay, Duguay, and Bourque. And we wonder why this team isn't any good into the 80s. Why this team struggles to put a franchise around Marcel Dion that's worthy of him. Can you imagine Ray Bourque on the blue line for the Kings in the 80s? What a difference that would have made in the Smythe division. But no. We got to get Ron Graham. So that first round draft pick, it's only a number 8 anyways. It really doesn't matter, right? And the best thing is it's traded in October of 1978. So they don't even know what number it's going to be. This is not a fantastic team. It could be as high as top 5. But no, it ends up being number 8 in a draft everybody knew was going to be riddled with superstars. August 22nd, 1979. The LA Kings acquire Andre Saint Laurent, a 1980 first-round draft pick. Yes, they get a first-round draft pick and then turn that into Larry Murphy. And a 1981 first-round pick, which becomes the number 2 overall, which they turn into Doug Smith. So that's a hit and a miss. You get a hit on the first and a miss on the second. Detroit gets Dale McCourt and the rights to Rogie Vachon. So we'll give that one to the Kings. All right. March 10th, 1980, Jerry Korab is traded to the LA Kings. The LA Kings traded their 1982 first-round draft pick in March of 1980. Have I mentioned how much I don't understand this board? That 1982 first-round draft pick they traded to Buffalo turned into Phil Housley. Of course, at this point last night, I am raging at this board. Just looking over the names of players that the LA Kings could have drafted and could have had, but they gave up those draft picks to try to make short-term patchwork gain. To which Yvonne just kind of laughed about it. Because she couldn't understand why I was so upset about it. This isn't a team that I'm a fan of. I look at how poorly managed this is, and I'm like, what the hell? This is poor asset management. Trading away all these draft picks years before. Just, like I said, if any team was doing this now, you would see endless calls for immediate firing of that general manager. Um, February 17th, 1981. They're not done trading away draft picks. They're not. They acquire Rick Chartraw from the Montreal Canadiens. I like Rick Chartraw just fine. Chartraw, sorry. Rick Chartraw was just fine. However, is he worth what they gave up? No. They gave up a 1983 second-round draft pick to the Montreal Canadiens, which became Claude Lemieux. What? Like, how? And this is a 1983 draft pick, and it's February of 1981. How do you do this? How? How do you continually give up draft pick after draft pick after draft pick? And for anybody going, well, at least they drafted Larry Murphy. Oh, there's more. October 18th, 1983, realizing their grave mistake of actually getting a first-round draft pick that produces for them, they acquire Brian Engblom and Ken Houston from the Capitals for Larry Murphy. I don't know what else to say about it. They traded away their point-producing defenseman on a team that kind of needed that. And they got back Engblom, who was fine as a defensive defenseman. He was. He was a good player. But was he worth Larry Murphy? No. Does adding Ken Houston turn the scales? No. No. Absolutely not. The most fun thing with Ken Houston was his name. That's a fun name. He probably should have. He would have been a NASCAR driver now, though. June 9th, 1984, the LA Kings. I've talked about this trade before. Bob Janesic is acquired along with a 1984 first, who doesn't end up being a big NHL player, a third, and a 1984 fourth, who, interestingly enough, they used to draft Tom Glavine. Great pitcher, Hall of Famer, fantastic. One of the greatest pitchers I ever watched. Never played a lick in the NHL. He was playing hockey and baseball and chose baseball. And smart move by Mr. Glavine on that one. The Chicago Blackhawks get back the 1984 first-round draft pick, which they used to draft Eddie Olczyk. Have I mentioned the Kings struggled in the 80s and didn't have enough depth? They also get a 1984 fourth-round draft pick to the Chicago Blackhawks. And then the big one. So we go forward 4 years from this. August 9th, 1988, they get Wayne Gretzky from the Oilers, along with Mike Krushelnyski and Marty McSorley, which is one of the greatest steals of all time. The Oilers get back Jimmy Carson, Marty Gelinas, who was a first-round draft pick over here. Remember, top 10 pick. 1989 first, a 1991 first, which becomes Martin Rucinski, and a 1993 first, as well as cash. It continued a pattern for the Kings. We don't like our first-round draft picks. We don't want our first-round draft picks. Can you take our first-round draft picks? It's required for Gretzky, yes. The Oilers are a budget team, and it's going to get worse. So acquiring these guys and those draft picks for Gretzky, Krushelnyski, and McSorley makes sense. However, it again shows a lack of vision of the future when it comes to the Kings. It's now. February 22nd, 1989, the LA Kings acquire Kelly Hrudey in exchange for Mark Fitzpatrick, Wayne McBean, and Doug Crossman going to the Islanders. Wayne McBean's notable in that he was a top 10 draft pick in 1987. So they've traded Carson shortly after they got him, McBean and Gelinas shortly after they drafted them. Daryl Sador doesn't last very long in LA either. There's a pattern here, which they broke right about when they drafted Drew Doughty. They were smart enough not to trade Drew Doughty. January 20th, 1990, the LA Kings acquire Tony Granato and Thomas Sandstrom from the New York Rangers for Bernie Nichols. I'm going to give this as a win to the Kings. Bernie Nichols had a fantastic season the year Gretzky arrived, 70 goals and 150 points. He would never approach those kinds of totals again. So turning that into Granato and Sandstrom, who were important guys to this team that didn't have depth because they kept trading all their draft picks, I'll give that win to the Kings. February 19th, 1992, the Kings acquire Paul Coffey. What goes the other way? If you guessed a first-round draft pick, you're right. Brian Benning, Jeff Chikrin, and a 1992 first, who the Philadelphia Flyers used to draft Jason Bowen, who doesn't become an NHLer, but still, they're still trading first-round draft picks. Keep in mind, here, For Gretzky, they trade the 89, 91, and 93 first. Yeah, the 92 first ended up going in another trade to get somebody else from the Oilers. No vision of the future. None. July 29th, 1994, they acquire Rick Tocchet and a 1995 second-round pick from the Pittsburgh Penguins for Luc Robitaille. Luc Robitaille never played as well anywhere as he did with the Kings, although he did have a couple of memorable goals for the Penguins while he was there. July 8th, 1995, the LA Kings acquire Byron Dafoe and Dmitry Kristich from Washington in exchange for, you guessed it, their first-round draft pick in 1996, which was number 4 overall, and a fourth-round pick. That number 4 overall draft pick became Volchkov. Volchkov was known as a very talented, enigmatic player who kind of had maybe an attitude problem. He never ended up being much of anything at the NHL level. And so I'll give the win to the LA Kings, but they're still trading all their firsts. Do you want a first? Do you want her first? So ridiculous. February 27th, 1996. They traded Gretzky to St. Louis. What did they get back? They got Craig Johnson, Patrice Tardif, Roman Vopat, a 1996 fifth-round pick, and they got a 1997 first-round draft pick. They drafted Matt Zoltek with that draft pick, but still, they got back a first-rounder. March 14th, 1996, the LA Kings acquire Ray Ferraro, Nathan Lafayette, Ian Laperriere, Matthias Nordstrom, and a 1997 fourth. The Rangers get Shane Churla, Yari Curry, and Marty McSorley as they continue to consolidate all of the Oilers over in New York. This one, I'll give the win to the Kings, simply based on the fact that you get 5 players back. Laperriere and Nordstrom, of course, Nordstrom had a nice long run as captain. Laperriere, a nice sandpaper guy for them. And Curry was pretty much done at this stage of the game. So you're basically losing Churla and McSorley. So it's not horrible. March 4th, nope, not that one. June 19th, 1999, the Kings acquire Marcel Cousineau, Zygmunt Palffy, Brian Smolinski, and a 1999 fourth, in exchange for the Islanders getting Matthew Biron, Josh Green, Olli Jokinen, and, that's right, a 1999 first-round draft pick. How did you know they threw in a first-round draft pick? You surprised? Me neither. Taylor Pyatt, who the Islanders drafted in that spot. But again, I'll give this as a win to the Kings because they get Ziggy Palffy out of it. The Islanders couldn't pay Palffy, and so the Kings didn't have to spend a huge price to get him. September 29th, 2006, I should say, the Kings acquire Oleg Tverdovsky and Jack Johnson. The Carolina Hurricanes get Tim Gleason and Eric Belanger, and I like that trade a lot for the Kings. I've been over that before. February 28th, 2011. Nope, June 20th, 2008. The Kings acquire a first-round draft pick in 2008. They used to acquire draft Colton Tubert and a 2009 third. So what went the other way? Buffalo drafts in the first round that year Tyler Myers. So they got Tubert and a third for Tyler Myers. So I guess the song remains the same. February 28th, 2011, LA acquires Dustin Penner from the Oilers in exchange for Colton Tubert because he's a first-rounder, so you got to get rid of him. And a 2011 first-round draft pick, which became Oscar Klefbom. Just keep throwing those first-rounders away. Just got to toss away these first-round draft picks. They're not even players. Look at this. We get a player back, and they get a draft, whatever that is. I don't know what that is. June 23rd, 2011, LA acquires Rob Bordson and Mike Richards. The Philadelphia Flyers acquire Braden Shen, Wayne Simmons, and a 2012 second. I can only assume they didn't have their first already at that point. February 23rd, 2012, the LA Kings get Jeff Carter. Columbus gets Jack Johnson and a 2013 first-round draft pick, which became Marco Dano. And yeah, in that one, they had a choice between taking the 2012 first-round pick or the 2013. They picked 2013 because in 2012 they won the Cup. So technically, they traded away both the 2012 and 13 pick. They just didn't know which one was actually going to go yet. Yeah, so that's interesting. June 25th, 2016, the LA Kings acquired Jack Campbell. Dallas acquires Nick Ebert. Jack Campbell had been basically just done with the Dallas Stars, and it didn't look like he was ever going to make it. The Kings have reclaimed his career quite well. They've done a fantastic job. So this is noteworthy, and of course, in the previous trades, acquiring Carter, acquiring Richards, helps them win Stanley Cup or two. February 21st, 2018, the Kings acquire Scott Wedgwood and Toby Reeder, the famous Toby Reeder, in exchange for Darcy Kemper going to the Arizona Coyotes, a win which is absolutely on the Arizona Coyotes side right now. January 28th, 2019, so we're up to this year, the LA Kings acquire Carl Grundstrom, Sean Durzi, and a 2019 first, which has become Tobias Bjornfot. So they acquired a first-round draft pick. That's right. This is different now than it used to be. And the Toronto Maple Leafs acquired Jake Muzzin. I really think this trade is a win for LA. I think the combination of Durzi and Grundstrom, I think they're both solid depth guys for the Kings who have that potential and upside. And getting a first-round draft pick in this year's draft, yeah, it's an average draft. It's not superstar studied. But you still have that potential. So, yeah. While this is fun to look at, their trade history, it's crazy. This is a team that if they just not traded their draft picks, would have been able to put together, I'm not going to say dynasty, but at the very least a contender. At the very least, this team's a contender if they'd done it right. It's baffling and it's bewildering, but this top part of the board is a part of the reason why they don't win a cup till 2012. They don't win a cup until they learn to do it right. Stop trading away your future. Stop trading away your draft picks and figure it out. And if you're going to lose a draft pick, get back younger players in return. Don't do it for veterans. Don't do it for bit players. It hasn't been a fantastic run. They've had their bumps and bruises along the way. They had attendance problems at certain points in time. But the Kings in general, I'll say they're one of the more successful expansion teams from the 1967 draft. That being said, I'd be interested to know your thoughts regarding the Los Angeles Kings. It is a crazy history when you just looking at the trades. Just looking at the trades, it's crazy to think of, how would the 80s have been if they'd had Ray Bourque on the blue line with Larry Murphy, and if they had drafted Housley as well. Oh, wow. Just the difference that would have made alone is just mind-blowing. Let me know your thoughts, though, in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through and you just happen upon this video. Well, scrolling around the internet or whatever you're doing with all the tubes of the internet being as tubey as they are. Thank you guys so much, though, for all your support. Hit like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you again soon.